Mara was a young waitress working at La Fontaine, a high-end restaurant nestled deep in the heart of Raleigh, North Carolina. Known for its elegant ambiance, sophisticated clientele, and refined atmosphere, the restaurant exuded class. The soft clinking of glasses blended with smooth jazz melodies, creating an air of exclusivity. But for Mara, this place was merely a stepping stone, not a destination. Dressed in a neatly pressed uniform and wearing a polite smile, she moved silently between tables, refilling wine glasses and serving guests with the professionalism her job demanded. Yet inside, she was far more than just a server. Music had flowed through Mara's veins since childhood. The old piano at home was her refuge, the place where she poured out her worries and let her dreams soar beyond any horizon. However, life's realities did not allow her to pursue that passion so easily. Bills had to be paid. Responsibilities weighed heavily on her shoulders, and she had to choose a more practical path. But even as she moved through a world of gourmet dishes and affluent patrons, Mara never forgot that she was born to play music, not to stand on the sidelines, serving the dreams of others forever. Mara grew up in a small town in South Carolina, where big dreams were often stifled by harsh realities. Her mother, a tirelessly hard-working nurse, did everything she could to provide for Mara and her siblings, ensuring that while they didn't have much, there was always food on the table. Music was the only thing that made Mara feel free within the limits of her world. Her mother had a collection of old vinyl records, filling their home with the sounds of jazz and classical melodies that seeped into Mara's soul from an early age. But what truly ignited her love for music was an old piano, gifted by a kind neighbor. Mara never had formal lessons, but she taught herself by ear, pressing each key, listening to songs on the radio, and recreating them with her small hands. As she got older, she played at church and community events, though no one knew that her dreams reached far beyond those small stages. When she came of age, reality hit hard. Scholarships never came, and family responsibilities were not something she could walk away from. She had no choice but to take the practical route, trading concerts for long work shifts. Yet, deep inside, the music never left her. It was only waiting for the day it would rise again. That night, the atmosphere at La Fontaine remained as refined as ever, until the restaurant doors swung open and Adam walked in. His arrival immediately drew the attention of those around him. A wealthy and arrogant businessman, Adam was known not only for his vast fortune, but also for his superiority complex and his enjoyment of flaunting his power. He strode in as if he owned the room, surrounded by a group of companions who radiated the same air of self-importance. Though the restaurant staff were accustomed to demanding guests, they exchanged knowing glances the moment he stepped inside. Mara recognized Adam instantly, but to her he was just another table to serve during her long shift. She paid no mind to his scrutinizing gaze or the way he carried himself, as if everything in the restaurant belonged to him. But Adam was no ordinary guest. When his eyes settled on Mara, a flicker of interest crossed his face, not out of admiration, but because he had just found his next target for amusement that evening. And Mara, though she didn't realize it yet, was about to become the centerpiece of the cruel game Adam was about to play. Mara quickly realized that Adam was no ordinary guest. He didn't just order his meal and continue dining like everyone else. From the moment she approached his table, she felt his sharp, scrutinizing gaze following her every movement. As she poured the wine, Adam spoke, his tone casual but laced with calculation. "What do you do when you're not waiting tables?" he asked, his voice feigning curiosity, but Mara knew it was a trap. She hesitated briefly before giving a simple reply. "I play the piano sometimes." Immediately, a smug smile spread across Adam's lips. He exchanged glances with his companions, as if he had just discovered a new source of amusement. "A pianist, huh?" He raised an eyebrow. "Then why don't you play something for us?" Mara felt the weight of the stares now focused on her. She forced a polite smile and shook her head. "I'm just here to work." But Adam wasn't one to let things go so easily. He leaned back in his chair, his voice louder now, deliberately drawing the attention of nearby diners. "What a shame. I guess you were just bluffing." His words landed like a direct hit to Mara's pride, and in that moment she knew, if she didn't act now, she would forever be dismissed as insignificant. Mara felt every pair of eyes locked onto her. The room seemed to freeze, conversations fading into the background. Adam leaned back in his chair, a smug, challenging smirk on his face, as if he had already won. She could refuse, she could walk away, but she knew that would only fuel his mockery. In her mind, she heard her mother's voice. "Never let anyone make you feel small, Mara. You are more than they will ever know." She took a deep breath, fingers tightening around the napkin in her hand before she let it go. "All right," she said, her voice steady and firm. A flicker of surprise crossed Adam's face. He hadn't expected her to accept the challenge. A ripple of murmurs spread through the restaurant as Mara slowly walked toward the grand piano in the corner. Under the chandelier's glow, its polished wooden surface reflected her image. As she sat down, her fingers brushed lightly over the keys. A brief tremor ran through her hands, but the moment she pressed the first note, all hesitation disappeared. The music rose, gentle, elegant, yet filled with raw emotion. The room fell silent. Even Adam had lost his smirk. The first notes rang out, soft, hesitant, like a whispered secret in the air. Mara closed her eyes, letting the world around her fade away until it was just her and the piano in front of her. She chose a piece she had known by heart for years, a melody rich with emotion, each keystroke painting the story of her life. As her hands grew more confident, so did the music. The melody swelled, cascading through the room, seeping into every corner, touching the souls of those who had only expected a fleeting moment of entertainment, but now found themselves swept into something far greater. The diners who had been murmuring just moments ago fell silent, as if afraid that even the smallest sound might shatter the magic unfolding before them. Mara didn't need to look to know that Adam was silent too. The mockery in his eyes had vanished, replaced by something she couldn't quite define. Perhaps surprise, perhaps humility. But that no longer mattered. For the first time in years, she was not just a waitress, not just a dreamer forced to suppress her passion. She was an artist, and the world was finally listening. As the final notes faded into the air, a profound silence settled over the restaurant. No clinking glasses, no hushed whispers, only the lingering echoes of the melody she had just played. Mara kept her hands resting on the keys for a moment, her breath still unsteady. Then, as if the room had been released from a spell, applause erupted. The diners, who had once been mere spectators, had now become witnesses to something extraordinary. They no longer looked at her as just a waitress. Their gazes were filled with respect, with genuine admiration. Some stood clapping relentlessly, their faces alight as if they had just experienced something remarkable. Mara's co-workers, the ones who had occasionally seen her glide her fingers over the old piano tucked away in the restaurant's storage room, were beaming with pride. They had always known she had talent, but they had never seen her shine like this. And then, through the sea of applause, Mara glanced toward Adam. He remained seated, his usual smugness gone. There was no trace of his earlier arrogance, no challenging stare. Instead, He was now faced with an undeniable truth. He had tried to humiliate her, but she, through sheer talent, had silenced the entire room with reverence. Amid the thunderous applause filling the restaurant, Mara remained composed. She slowly lifted her hands from the piano keys, feeling her heartbeat gradually steady. She had done it, not to prove anything to Adam, but to affirm herself in front of everyone. Adam still sat there, his arrogance stripped away. His face was tense, his eyes no longer filled with mockery, but with something more complex, perhaps confusion, perhaps astonishment. Whatever it was, he could no longer deny what had just unfolded before him. The waitress he had dismissed, the woman he had assumed would be nothing more than a fleeting amusement for the evening, had turned the moment into a lesson he wouldn't soon forget. Mara didn't need an apology or validation from Adam. She hadn't played to silence him, but that was exactly what had happened. Adam, with all his wealth and power, had no rebuttal for what everyone in the room had just witnessed. Mara wasn't just talented, she was fearless, and that, more than anything, left him with no choice but to sit there, facing his own quiet defeat. The applause had yet to fade, and murmurs of admiration rippled through the room. Mara rose from the piano bench, taking a deep breath, feeling a sense of liberation unlike anything she had ever known. She hadn't just played a piece of music, she had told her story through every note. And tonight, everyone had listened. The diners looked at her with newfound respect. Her colleagues whispered among themselves, their pride unmistakable. An older woman offered a gentle smile, nodding in quiet approval. A distinguished gentleman placed a hand over his heart, as if moved by something deeper. But what surprised Mara most was the shift in atmosphere at Adam's table. The same companions who had once laughed with him now avoided making eye contact. Their arrogance, their bravado, it had all disappeared, replaced by an uneasy silence. Mara walked toward them, no longer feeling small. She didn't need to bow her head to anyone in this room anymore. For the first time all evening, Adam was no longer in control of the game. He might have wealth, he might have power, but tonight there was only one true victor, and it was her. As the applause gradually faded, the atmosphere in the restaurant shifted noticeably. The diners who had turned away from Adam's spectacle returned to their meals, but their gazes occasionally drifted back toward Mara, filled with genuine admiration. The restaurant staff, those who had watched her work tirelessly every day, exchanged nods of quiet encouragement. Adam's table, once filled with laughter and smug amusement, had fallen completely silent. His companions, the same ones who had cheered on his mockery, now avoided eye contact, as if distancing themselves from his defeat. Adam sat there, his hands clasped together on the table. The smug grin he had worn earlier now gone. He could feel the shift in the air, the reversal of control, one he had never anticipated. Finally, Adam spoke, his voice louder than necessary, as if trying to shatter the heavy silence pressing down on him. "Well, that was unexpected," he chuckled, but the confidence in his tone had vanished. "I suppose real talent can come from the most unlikely places." His words landed in the space between them like a heavy stone, met with nothing but silence. No one responded. Mara simply tilted her head slightly, her gaze calm yet unwavering. There was nothing more to say, because she had already won. Not just through her music, but through the uneasy silence that now surrounded Adam. Mara stood there, silently watching Adam. The arrogance he had carried into the restaurant had vanished. In its place was uncertainty, a feeble attempt to hold on to whatever pride he had left. But Mara didn't care. She didn't need his acknowledgement. She hadn't played to impress anyone. She had played because it was who she was, because it was the dream she had never abandoned. A wave of relief washed over her. For the first time in a long while, she felt like herself again. She was no longer just a waitress, bound to the demands of others. No longer just a dreamer, shackled by responsibilities and the limitations of life. She was an artist, someone who had made an entire room fall silent and listen. As she returned to her work, something within her had changed. Her posture was straighter. Her steps carried a newfound confidence she had never felt before. The customers she served no longer saw her as just the person bringing food to their table. They saw someone with a story to tell, and they had heard it in every note she played. That night, as Mara left La Fontaine, the crisp night air filled her lungs, carrying a feeling she hadn't experienced in a long time: certainty. She walked slowly, her shoes tapping lightly against the pavement as she made her way toward her small apartment. In her coat pocket, the tips from tonight were more than usual. It wasn't just generosity from the diners who had witnessed her performance. It was recognition, a sign that she had touched them in a way she had never imagined. But money wasn't the only thing she carried home that night. As she opened the door to her apartment, her eyes immediately landed on the old piano in the corner. The keys were worn, the sound no longer as crisp, but to Mara, it was still home. She sat down, letting her fingers glide softly over the keys, allowing the music to once again fill the small yet warm space around her. The only difference now was that she knew she was no longer alone in her dream. There were people who had listened, people who believed, and most importantly, she had found her faith in herself once again. A few days after that fateful night, Mara received an unexpected phone call. On the other end was a deep, composed voice, polite yet firm. "I was at La Fontaine that evening," the man said, "and I want to hear your performance again, this time in a recording studio." Mara froze. The caller was a music producer from Nashville. This wasn't an empty promise of fame, nor mere flattery. It was a real opportunity. An opportunity she had once believed would never come. She tightened her grip on the phone, a mix of excitement and fear surging through her. Was she ready? Was this the right moment? But then she remembered the way the diners had looked at her that night, the sound of the applause, the way Adam had been defeated, not by anger, but by her music. She took a deep breath. "I'm ready," she said. And for the first time in years, she truly believed it. No more waiting. She was going to step through the door that fate had opened for her. Mara sat before the old piano in her small apartment, her fingers gliding gently over the familiar keys. That night at La Fontaine had changed her forever, not because she had silenced Adam, nor because the room had erupted in applause, but because she had finally recognized her own worth. In the past, fear and doubt had held her back. She had once believed that big dreams were only for those with the privilege to chase them. But now she knew the truth. Her ability had always been within her. No one had the right to decide whether she was worthy except for herself. Adam might have wealth, might have power, but those things could never replace talent and authenticity. He could mock her, but in the end, he had been defeated by something he could never buy: pure passion. Mara looked down at her hands, then back at the piano. She was ready, not just to play, but to live her passion. No more fear, no more hesitation, only her and the road ahead. And this time, she wasn't looking back. Mara's story is not just a fleeting moment of triumph. It is proof of the power of perseverance and self-belief. In life, there will always be people like Adam, those who use power, money, or status to make others doubt their own worth. But no one can dictate our dreams except us. Had Mara given in to fear, had she allowed Adam's ridicule to make her shrink away, she would have remained a waitress, hiding her true talent. But by standing up, by letting her music speak for itself, She proved that a person's value is not determined by the approval of others, but by their own skill and the passion they pursue. Life will always bring challenges. There will be moments of doubt, moments where we are underestimated or pushed to our limits. But what matters most is how we choose to respond. When we dare to stand up, to chase what we love, no matter how harsh the circumstances, we have the power to change the world around us. Thank you for watching. If you found this video interesting or enjoyable, please show your support by giving it a thumbs up. It really helps the channel grow and reach more amazing viewers like you. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss out on our future uploads. Your support means the world to us and keeps us motivated to create even better content for you.